Welcome to the Literally First Class podcast, where I will teach you how to overcome anxiety and achieve somatic success. I'm your host, Keri Ford. I'm a somatic success and holistic life coach here to bring humor, insight, and wisdom to the modern day woman that wants to feel alive in her daily life. You ready? Come on, I saved you a seat in first class. Oh my God, I am laughing because I have tried to record this episode at least 2 times. And I was like, oh, a leaf blower. It's fine. That was in my last fucking episode, literally in the background. Is that another leaf blower? No. They follow me around. What are they blowing? So there's a leaf blower in the background of my other episode. Then there's a leaf blower in the background of this episode a few times when I was trying to record it. And then the neighbor's kid came over and rang the doorbell, not once, not twice, 4 times. I was like, yeah, my production team's pretty great, but that's a lot of noise to fucking edit out. Like, let's just erase the episode and start over. So here we are. We're starting over. Okay, so today's episode, I want to dive into the 5 regrets of the dying. Oh, that's so positive and uplifting, Keri. No, but I promise it actually is very interesting because in the last episode, I talked about really the juice that is worth the squeeze, and that is we have more when we actually have less. It's paradoxical thinking. Like, more does not necessarily mean more material things. In fact, some of the most unhappy people have the most material things, but we can't fill voids from the outside in. We've got to love ourselves whole from the inside out. And that looks a lot like being present where your feet are, but also simplifying life a lot more, right? And so when I was creating a second company a couple years ago, it was a luxury global retreat company with a business partner. We were doing some research on high achievers and the marketing and the messaging that really was going to land with this particular avatar. Now, to be clear, I still serve this woman. This is the 1% woman. This is the high achievers. This is all of y'all that are the perfectionists and you don't struggle with motivation. Like, I know that's exactly why you're here, so I'm talking to you. But I came across the 5 regrets of the dying. And this is based on Bronnie Ware, who was a nurse that nursed people basically on their deathbed. And I think it's a woman. I think Bronnie is a woman. But what she discovered was that there were common themes that kept coming up over and over again. So many, in fact, that were common. She distilled them down to these 5 specific regrets of the dying. And I remember at the time them hitting me in different ways, but I was curious to go back and see how they land with me now. And also, I'm curious how they land with you. So the first one is, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. Whew. And knowing what I know now about the fawn response, and I have this framework inside my academy, and there's 2 specific archetypes in the fawn response: the people pleaser and the perfectionist. And so those of you that resonate with being a people pleaser or having trouble, really identifying like where somebody else ends and you begin, or you end and they begin, and like if those thoughts are your own, you've probably spent a significant amount of time making sure that someone else is okay so that you can be okay. And asked in a question, it looks kind of like this: who do I need to be in order to keep the peace? Who do I need to be in order to keep this relationship? Or who do I need to be in order to have you be okay? So really starting to own your voice here, own your power, and connect to what it is you actually want. Because when you have been in a people pleaser fawn response, or that's like let's say that's your dominant archetype in my anxious achiever archetype framework. If that's your dominant archetype, it's really hard actually to hear yourself outside of other because you have spent so much time externally. It's actually a social stress response. You've spent so much time externally making sure everyone else is okay before you are allowed to be okay that it is hard to understand where your beliefs even begin and what you really think, what you really want. And this is really just the power of authentically connecting to yourself. So that one hit me hard because I used to have trouble setting boundaries with people. I used to be a doormat. No one used to listen to me when I walked into a room. My energy has shifted and there's people experience me massively differently now. That's a tongue twister. Number 2, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Wow. Time is the one currency that you cannot get back. You can only spend it once. I've shared that before on an episode. And let that land in your body for a moment. Like, wow, we don't get this minute or this next moment. We don't get that back. Time is always ever unfolding. And if you're spending your time working, then that's fine, but let there be room in your life for other things. Connection, fun, play, relationships. At the end of the day, that's really what is going to fulfill you. Work is fulfilling, yes, in a different way, but it can't be the only place that you seek fulfillment. Otherwise, you're not going to know who you are outside of doing and achieving, outside of the title, right? Holistic success is the 360 picture. It's the whole picture. So this nurse said that this came from every male patient she nursed, and women did speak of this regret, but most were from an older generation. And I will say that many of the female patients had not been breadwinners like so many of my clients are. Many of my clients have retired their husbands, or they just make more money than their husbands. And so we just live in or at least I coach a different type of woman than maybe perhaps what this study was done on. Number 3, I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. Some of you don't have an issue expressing your feelings. Some of you, it is like the fear of God in you when you go to actually say what it is you want or what it is that's upsetting you or when you are connecting to expressing a need. Sometimes clearing conversations or conscious conversations can be challenging too. Like, let's say nothing has happened in that particular moment, but historically, let's say you've got a dynamic going on with mom and you're like, I'm noticing this pattern. This dynamic keeps playing out. She keeps doing this. I keep responding this way. We are locked in a pattern. The only way to break that, if you choose to have a relationship with mom, is going to be through having a clearing conversation. I deeply believe in the power of speaking up for what is true and real for you. But that can come with massive fear, especially if you kind of feel like you haven't been prepared on some conscious communication skills, right? And that looks like you taking ownership and responsibility for your experience without projecting that onto the other person, and then knowing that there can be two things that exist at once. And what I mean by that is you hurt me, but I still love you, right? Hurt and love can still coexist, right? Just like we can be excited about something, but we can still be scared about it. Those things can coexist. It's both and. So there is their experience and there is your experience, and both can coexist. So it's really just about having the conversation from a very detached space, meaning maybe they won't fully receive it or be open to hearing it, or nothing changes. And that gets to be okay, because the whole point of having a conversation like that is simply just to practice expressing what's real for you. So expressing your feelings and being okay with other people not being okay with you at the risk of losing the peace. The funny thing here, though, is if you risk losing the peace between you and somebody else because they're not okay with you, then you end up doing it to yourself otherwise. Then you lose your peace, right? Because you've decided not to speak up for what's true and real for you in that moment. So that's a powerful practice, and we dive into that inside the academy as well. Number 4, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. This one's interesting for me because if you're like me, you've probably had seasons of friends. It's like, these were my high school friends. These are my college friends. These are my entrepreneurial friends. But I didn't really stay in touch with a lot of people. In fact, I feel like I outgrew circles quickly. And so that's an interesting one for me because I didn't really desire to stay in touch with everybody. But what I will say is I do desire to create more time and space to have touch points with my current friends. And so that's important to me too. And so wherever that lands for you might be something worth exploring. And if you're really wanting to upgrade your circle, you need to apply for the Made for More retreat because that's happening in August. And that is actually, when we do an exercise at the retreat or in the academy, that is a category that most women feel like they are deficient in. They're like, man, I really wish that I had a group of women that can help me elevate my life. Like if I could upgrade my circle, that would feel really fulfilling and juicy for me. And so making new friends, maybe. But yeah, staying in touch with old friends is number 4 on the 5 regrets of the dying. And the last one, and this is so interesting, number 5, I wish that I had let myself be happier. I wish that I had let myself be happier. And what she writes is this, because I think this is really interesting. Many did not realize until the end that happiness is a choice. They had stayed stuck in old patterns and habits. The so-called comfort of familiarity overflowed into their emotions, as well as their physical lives. Fear of change had them pretending to others and to themselves that they were content, when deep within, they longed to laugh properly and have silliness in their life again. So that is from Bronnie's book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, A Life Transformed by the Dearly Departing. So where are you in or out of alignment with these things? Which one do you want to deposit more time into? And do any of these really land? I feel like they each landed with me in a different way, some more than others. I mean, let's see, if I'm scrolling through these 5, I feel like I've worked through number 1 a lot, like expectations from others. I probably 4 or 5 years ago when I first started doing this deep personal development work, I had a lot of codependency to break through. So I feel like I've done that. Let's see. Number 2, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I feel like I do pretty good with that. There's seasons though, right? There's seasons of reevaluating my calendar and my priorities and getting clearer and clearer on the life I desire to live and how that looks in my daily everyday happenings. And then number 5 is, I think, a constant. Like if you're here listening to this podcast, if you're interested in the somatic work, if you are already deep into the beautiful work of personal development, I think you already know that there's patterns and habits and that happiness is ultimately a choice. But sometimes, even though we know that it's a choice, it's just like when we have all the tools to like feel our feelings and work through patterns, sometimes it's just like, I'm being human for a moment and I just want my fucking cranky moment. So that's okay too. So I think it's a constant reminder, if you're committed to this kind of work, that you always have a choice, right? You can always rise up out of that victim consciousness into, this is happening for me, this is happening through me, this is happening as me, and I am the creator of my universe, of my world, which includes my experience of it and my reaction to it. Well, thanks for tuning in today, and I will see you on the next episode of Literally First Class.
I hope you enjoyed your flight, and I'll see you on board again soon.
Seriously though, thanks for listening. If you're ready to take this work deeper and upgrade your mind, I want to invite you to join us inside my Millionaire Mindset program. This is where you'll start using my guided meditations to help you overcome anxiety and experience even more abundance. When you join, you'll have access to my entire audio library. Head over to elevatewithkeri.com and we'll see you inside.